Happy Monday. Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
3 more sessions. While we're waiting for folks to hop in. You've been through 17 sessions at this point. What are your big takeaways?
Today is my first day, so I got no takeaways.
That's okay. I will show you where to find all the recordings for the 17 previous.
Awesome, thank you.
And today's my favorite one. It's on negotiations, so you're in for a good session.
I like.
Yeah. All right, somebody share. I know some familiar faces on the screen. What have you learned?
I can go. My biggest takeaway, I think, is just managing my time. I know that sounds silly, but I think that I've learned that it's not really as silly because you need to manage your time in order to succeed in this business. And I know yesterday I was setting up my schedule for the week, and I don't think it should be done on Mondays. I've learned I think it should be done prior to Monday, and it's super helpful to get that all set up before the week starts.
Yeah. When I was, and still to this day, I do it Friday because my goal is not to take, I'm fortunate. I coach and I train. So I work a half a day Saturday, but the second half of Saturday and all of Sunday are really my time.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is to not, so if I'm planning for the week Sunday night, that's taking away from me time. So when I was practicing real estate, it was 11 o'clock on Fridays. I'd spend an hour just what's my 411 for next week? What do I need to do? And what does my calendar look like? So absolutely do not do it on a Sunday night or a Monday morning. Sundays, especially if you're hosting open houses, you really want to be able to enjoy the rest of your Sunday if you're doing open houses earlier in the day.
All right, I'll definitely try to do Fridays then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's never going to be perfect, right? There's always going to be a time when things are a little messy. What else? What else have we learned over these 17 sessions?
The importance of using what KW has given to us, like Command and all of the training sessions and just everything that's available to us, really using those and getting involved.
Yeah, no need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of us like to be creative. You can be creative after you know the models. What else? One more.
It's amazing to me how you can learn from different people telling you the same thing. They
100%.
they word it differently, their mannerisms, everything. It's like you soak it in from everybody and you're in a good place.
100%. I've taught more Ignites this go around. Usually I only teach 2 for that exact reason, Brian, because everybody tells the story a little bit different. You hear things a little bit different. Awesome. Anyone else have one to share? All right. So like I said, it's Monday. This is session 18. We have session 18, 19, and 20. I will be with you for session 20, which is the wrap up and where we go from here. Today, we're going to talk about negotiation. Somebody tell me, when you hear the word negotiation, what do you think of?
Haggling.
Going on the octagon.
Okay. What else? You guys see my screen that says negotiation 18?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. What else?
Skill.
Skill. Okay.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Discussion.
Absolutely. Great words. I love it. All right. So what we're going to focus on is when you think of negotiation, you're not just negotiating with one person, you're negotiating with a bunch of different people in the transaction. And that's what we're really going to go over. If my screen decides it wants to work. So we're going to talk about what is negotiation. We're going to dive deeper. I asked you what your opinion of that is. Then we're going to talk about the 3 P's of negotiation. We're going to talk about negotiation tips. We're going to run a couple of scenarios, and then we're going to recap and do ahas and talk about the success. So negotiating is not something to be avoided or feared. It's an everyday part of life. We negotiate every day. If you have children, you negotiate with your children. If you have parents, you negotiate with your parents. If you name it, you do it, right? That last pineapple on the grocery store, you're negotiating who's going to get that pineapple, right? That's how we do it. Now we have the Y4C2Ts, right? Win-win or no deal. Integrity in all things. So when we're looking at negotiation, obviously there has to be a winner and a loser. And yet, do we really need to have a winner and a loser? Or is it really everybody gets their needs met? Does that make sense? So that's what we're really going for. Win-win or no deal means the buyer gets what the buyer needs, the seller gets what the seller needs. We as agents get what we need, and then we go from there. So the Y4C2Ts, win-win or no deal, integrity, do the right thing, customers always come first, commitment in all things, communication, seek first to understand. When you think seek first to understand, what does that mean when we're talking about negotiation?
One of the best quotes I heard was, don't ask questions to speak, ask questions to understand.
Right. Yeah.
Your arsenal of your tools is way more effective if you get where they're coming from.
100%. And you'll hear, like, even the way I teach this class, like some people will talk to you. I'm all about asking questions. And I know it drives a lot of people crazy because I'll sit here and wait till somebody answers. When you answer the question, it's win-win, right? It's understanding, because if I'm just talking at you, you're not going to understand to the level that you can. And then you have creativity, ideas before results, teamwork, together, everyone achieves more. This is another one. Buyer agents, seller agents, right? If you are a team, whether you like it or not, right? Because you have to work together as a team to get the negotiation done, to get the contract signed. So you are very much teamwork. Trust starts with honesty, right? Are you being honest? Equity, opportunities for all. And success results through people. Success results through people. This one, when you think of results through people, what do you think of?
Getting what you want with the help of people around you.
Right. You're not driving through people, right? You're not running over people. You're working together as a team. And a lot of people mistake that with, well, my goal is 100 transactions, right? I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. When you implement the Y4C2Ts, and that's what separates KW agents from many other agents, is the fact that we focus on this and we want to be kind, we want to be fair, and we want to be professional. That makes sense? And here's the other thing, right? You're always building relationships. If you have a bad transaction, that transaction ends. However, that relationship still goes on because you never know if you're going to have another transaction with that agent again. So the path to negotiation, there's two options. You have an offer, it's accepted, and you close. We all dream for those, right? When we get those, we're like, yes, right? Because they're far and few between. And then you have an offer, it's rejected or countered. It's negotiated. That negotiation is accepted or rejected. And then you get to close. And here's the thing. How many times do you think you negotiate in a transaction?
Many.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you negotiate when you write the offer. Some states you write the offer and then you're an attorney state. And so there's negotiation with the attorney, and then you get through inspections. There's a negotiations with the inspections. And then there's times where the appraisal doesn't come in where it should come in, or something happens to the house and you constantly have to negotiate. So it's not a one and done. And that's why we get paid the big bucks to do this. And sometimes, honestly, you'll get to the end of the transaction. You're like, all the time and energy I spent in it, I'm in the red. right? Because they're not just, it's not a clear path. So who do you negotiate with? Your clients, the agent on the other side of the transaction, and their clients, right? So when I say you have to negotiate with your clients, you're actually working on their behalf. So why would you be negotiating with your own clients?
To make sure they're not living in la la land, that the offers or the prices are all legit, the science basically provides the information instead of them thinking, my house is worth 500,000, but it's only appraising for 420.
Right? Absolutely. What else?
You're also the one communicating with them, not the other way around. So you're kind of talking with them before talk with the sellers.
Absolutely. Yep. So first and this is where one of the sessions we did last week, we talked about that initial conversation and consultation, right? That's where the negotiation with your client starts, because that's where you're learning where are they at, what do they desire to happen, and how, and where is the situation real and where is it not real? Where do they need to understand something differently? And then the agent on the other side, you have to negotiate with them because their clients have a whole opinion of how this transaction is going to work. So what are the two things that we negotiate? It's price and terms, right? And if you've been on calls before, you've heard me say, when we look at the price covers condition, location, and all the other obstacles, right? So price is always the primary because it fixes the others. The other terms are fine, where are we at financially, right? Right now, we're seeing an increase in interest rates. So negotiation looks a little different with the opportunity to do points and buy downs and all these things that 6 months ago we weren't even talking about, right? All right, so what did you hear in that?
We're constantly negotiating.
Absolutely. Hey, Diane, can you do me a favor? Can you get everybody's ahas for 30 seconds?
Okay, I need 30 seconds worth of ahas. Anything come to you? Any big takeaways or small?
Sorry, negotiations is kind of like the language of realtors.
Yep. I would say, it's really largely education because you're sharing things that might be different than what a buyer or seller come to you with. So by educating, you're already starting to negotiate because you're trying to sort of change their thoughts a little bit, right? So that they understand what we already know. Who else has an aha? One more, Brian.
Maybe not an aha, but a question or a comment, I guess. I don't know how this would be worded, but if you're going to a house and you see that the person representing the seller is from the same office that you're from, is that kind of like okay, I know this person's professional. I know the house is going to be priced right. I know that they've consulted their person so that we're all on the same page. Nobody's living in this, my house is worth way more.
No.
Is it like that?
No. Oh, well, Tiffany, you want to take it?
No, you could go for it.
No, that would be a lot to assume because sometimes when we negotiate with our clients, buyers or sellers, they don't always take our advice. They're not always sharing a position. So you can't assume that it's necessarily a price that's right for your buyer. And that's up to your buyer anyway at the end. And hang on, I'm trying to view.
I got it.
Got it. I got one. You got one? I got them. Okay.
So ultimately, the price is decided by the seller, even though you've counseled them, you've showed them the CMAs, you've done everything you can to convince them that the sweet spot is over here, but they're still over here.
Brian, honestly, this is a much bigger discussion. And I'd be happy to talk to you at the office about it because with all due respect, it's not a science.
Yeah, and it's you advise, they decide.
Yeah.
You give them the information. And just a really quick, I always tell when I sit down for a consultation, I say one of three things are going to happen. We're going to decide to work together. You're going to decide I'm not the agent for you, or I'm going to decide if it's a seller, I'm going to decide your property may not be a property that fits my inventory, right? And a lot of the reason why is because if the house, in my opinion, the value of the house is somewhere between 400 and 450, and the seller wants to list it for 525, I need to take into consideration, is that realistic? And am I willing to do it? Because my philosophy in business is no business is better than bad business, because I'm not going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and stress out because I have an angry seller who I knew I wasn't going to be able to sell for the price and chose to take that listing anyway.
Good answer.
Many years. All right, the 3 Ps of negotiation. We have prepare, we have present, and we have position. So to prepare, you have to get all the information, right? And this is very much what we just talked about. Do I know what's going on in the market? Do I understand my client's needs and desires? All of that. Do I understand what's going on the other side? Then we present, right? You present the offer twice. You present it once with your client as you're writing it, and then you present it again. So when you present it the second time, that questions around that is you're presenting to the listing agent. When you're presenting to your client, the one question that I always ask is, hey, Mr. Client, if you found out that you lost the property over $1,000, could you sleep at night, right? So I am always asking these questions to decide whether or not they're making the best offer they possibly can. And then we have the position, right? Move both parties closer until you have a full agreement. And that's the back and forth. And there have been deals that I've gone back and forth 10, 15 times. And there's deals that I haven't had to go back at all. It just depends on where we are in the transaction. All right, let me get back to there. So when you prepare, you have to know your goal, you know your client's goal, think ahead, set clear expectations, be informed, obey the laws, know the documents inside and out. The one that you have the biggest control of right now is know the documents inside and out and obey the laws and be informed. Right? You have control of that right now. You can know the documents inside and out because you've read them 5 times, you practiced 5 times, you've written, like you've really gone through all of those documents and you've pretended that Mickey Mouse bought a house from you, Donald Duck bought, like whatever it takes, right? Obeying the laws. We just went through real estate school for those that are newer to the business. And even still, if you've been around a little bit, you take continuing ed. Being informed, what's going on in the market? Right? What's going on with interest rates? Am I looking in the MLS to see what houses are selling for in the areas that I'm in? The top 4, the know your goal, know your client, think ahead, and set clear expectations. This is where you and your client do a little bit of a dance. You know, knowing your goal is, do you feel that both of you are going to be able to meet win-win, right? Is the buyer a buyer that says, I want to pay 50 cents on the dollar and I don't care that the house is listed for 375, 425, I'm going to offer 175, right? So is the goal the same? Do you know your client? Like what's the purpose for purchasing right now? The thinking ahead, right? So then when you're looking at these, well, number one, if you did your consultation correctly, you're in business with people that you desire to be in business with. But even then, there's times when that doesn't work. There are times when they said one thing and then another thing happens. So you're always taking a check and seeing what's real and what's not real. Any questions about this? Because this is a huge part. The prepare, this is where you win the relationship.
I have a question, Tiffany. For your expectations, like, can you give us an example of your expectations for prepare? Is that okay if you do that?
So, yeah, absolutely. So, are they realistic? Am I able to deliver what their needs, right? One of the things that we always say is we like to under promise and over deliver. Is that a client that I'm going to be able to under promise and over deliver? Is there stress, you know, around the sense of urgency? Do they need to be in a house in the next 30 to 60 days? And am I setting myself up for win-win? You know, do I know everything I need to know about the client? Any other questions about this? Because this is huge. This is really the most important part.
What else would there be for know your goal other than to sell the house or get your buyer into the house? Isn't that the ultimate goal?
Yes and no. Do you know how many times I talked a seller out of selling? Or a buyer out of buying, right? It's not always, it's not. Sometimes you go to an appointment and the expectation is that they're going to become a client or you're going to negotiate a win-win, and it doesn't, it's just not the way it is, because they're the emotional side, right? They are 100% in the emotion, and we are 100% in. We're not supposed to be emotional because we're supposed to be delivering the facts. Does that make sense? Diane, anything you want to add to this?
I could go on and on. But with regard to goal, you know, like Tiffany said, you might, they might be making a decision that you don't think is in their best interest. At the end of the day, they get to decide, but it's also incumbent upon us to stick to our morals, right? And if our goal is to have them, I don't know, not acquiesce on something, or have them, if our goal is to even make suggestions to sweeten the pot, to do something better, to get them the house. When you said to get, it's not always our goal to get them that house. It's our goal to get them the right home.
Right.
At the end of the day, they'll decide which one that is, but it's not always the one they happen to be making an offer on then. So I would say that that's for now.
And, you know, this is where the lead generation is so important, because if you have a healthy pipeline, a third will work with you, a third will change their mind, a third will work with somebody else, right? So if we're constantly stressing out because we need that next commission, we're not always working in the best interest of our client. So having a healthy pipeline and lead generating every day makes sure that knowing our goals, knowing our clients' goals, and doing all this becomes a lot easier. Because if a buyer shouldn't buy and we have 7 other buyers that should, we're okay. And we're going to work in the best interest of the client. And sometimes that doesn't happen because we have to pay our bills. And that's, you know, we should never come from, well, I just want the commission. And I know nobody on this will. And yet, if your mortgage is due, that puts an undue stress on you. Any other thoughts about prepare? All
I
right.
was just gonna say, somebody just sent me a text and didn't leave their name, and then they just texted again and left their name. So it was somebody on this call.
Yes. All right. So now we're going to talk about present. Oh, no. Well, let's go back. I like this. So ask the right questions, right? Provide you with points you will negotiate, provide insight on where you and your client will have leverage, set clear expectation, allows you to get to know your client and their goal, helps you learn what will make it a win-win negotiation for both parties. So that's asking the right questions. Open versus closed questions. I used to be a closed-ended question. That's yes or no, right? Do you want to paint your house green? That's a yes or no. If you were to paint your house, what color would you like? When you ask open-ended questions, it gives you an opportunity to get more information. So we're always looking at, it's not, do you like the house? That's a yes or no question. What about the house do you like? What about the house do you not like? If you were to write in an offer today, which house delivered the most value for what your goals are, right? It's answering the questions. And then when they say, you know, on the screen, it says, what's important about closing in 30 days, right? Because what if the seller needs 60 days? So now the negotiation needs to be around, the buyer wants 30 days, the seller wants 60 days. Well, what's important about closing in 30 days for a buyer? It may be the interest rate. It may be that they want to change their job and they need to close before they change their job. So if we know that information, we can negotiate the contract so that we close in 30 days and maybe rent back the house for 59 days, right? Like there's different opportunities. So asking these questions, and then how do you feel about that? That's the emotional side, right? When you ask the emotion, logic makes them think, emotion makes them act. So this is how we get it to where it needs to be. What are your thoughts about the questions and asking open-ended versus closed-ended questions?
I think it's great. And I think also to go on. So if you either repeat what they say, which is called mirroring, or you just stay silent when they've answered, they'll usually keep talking, give you more information. So Tiffany, if you could paint the house any color, what would you paint it?
Like a neutral color.
Neutral. Okay, neutral color.
Yeah, right. And then what's important about having it neutral, right?
And usually you'll tell me before I even ask that. Because
Right.
if it's a neutral color, you say, yeah, because, and we do it on each other all the time. We practice it and it's really interesting. And if they don't say something, you say neutral, that yeah, I can tell me about that. Tell me why. And just keep going. But I would say you'll get as many people when you say nothing to give you the information before you even ask about it. If you repeat back to them what they'd said. And if you practice waiting 3 seconds, counting to 3, usually they keep talking because people feel uncomfortable in the silence, except for this group. Anyway, but you just wait 3 seconds and they'll either keep spewing or then you answer your question. So it demonstrates that you're listening because you are.
Yeah.
And it also gives them an opportunity to just keep going, give you more detail.
Running joke is the one who breaks the silence first is the one that loses. Right? Like, so if I'm sitting here negotiating with somebody and I answer, I've given away something, right? Because that's where the information comes into play.
I would say that a closed-end question will give you an answer. An open-ended question will give you reasons.
Correct, 100%.
You need those reasons to find them the best house that they want. Like if you ask them yes or no questions, it doesn't help you at all. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't limit anything or give you any options for them. It kind of just, I guess,
Yep.
limits yourself.
Yeah, well, and you sat down and you had this consultation and they told you that they wanted a single floor living with a garage and a fireplace. So you show them 7 houses that are single floor living with a garage and a fireplace, and they don't choose any of those houses. The only way you're gonna know what happened is if you ask questions. Right? And how many times have I showed single floor living houses and they actually buy a colonial? It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. So what would happen if, right? Why is this important to you? You're just getting more details, more insight. The more information you have, the easier it is for you to take and move forward on action. So in your book, on page 18.6, so session 18, page 6, there's a scenario, and I'm going to read it to you so that if you don't have the book, you don't have to. It says, you are representing a single buyer. Your client is renting her present property. Like any first-time buyer, she is looking to you to guide her through the process. The asking price for the home she really loves is $175,000. The house appears to have evidence of a roof leak, is listed as is, and is correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she still has a number of student loans to pay off. She wants to write an offer at $155,000. There has been quite a bit of activity on the listing. What questions would you ask?
Of the client, Tiffany?
Yes.
Where'd you come up with that price
Okay.
for that offer?
Yep. What else?
I would obviously ask, do you have money to fix the leak?
Okay. What else?
how badly do you want this house?
Okay. What else?
If you didn't have another opportunity, in other words, the seller just didn't respond, would you be okay with losing the home?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you see yourself living in this house 6 months from now? So, all right, what's important about offering 155,000? Based on the market analysis I shared with you showing values.
So we're assuming you already did a CMA and the
So
house
you are-
is worth 175?
That's what it says in here. It says the house appears to have evidence is as is and is correctly priced. So we know the property is correctly priced. See, just because this is where we get in trouble. They list the house for 175 as is with the leaking roof. Do you think in most instances they've taken into consideration the leaking roof?
Yeah.
And how much it would cost to fix?
Correct. And yet buyers and buyer agents are like, well, it's great and I'm going to deduct it again, right? For the most part, sellers have made that education and that price based on what it is. So, I would also ask if you were the seller in this in this situation, what would you think of that 155 offer price? If there were 7 offers on the property, do you think 155 would make it happen?
No.
No chance.
And are you okay if it doesn't? Right?
Yeah.
So it's just asking great questions. And
And
it
they're
takes,
already presented to you too. They're already there.
right.
What if there are no offers on the house and you're the only one and she wants to go 155?
They can always counter, I guess.
So I'm just gonna, offers are a conversation starter. Actually, they're the answer to the conversation starter is the starting price when it comes on the market. And the response is an offer.
Right.
And just like any other conversation, because that's really what a negotiation is, there's some back and forth. If it's the only offer, you try to make it work. Even if it's one of 17 offers, it may have the best terms. What if it's no inspection? What if it's cash? And you have an offer for 185 that has an inspection, whatever the terms are. It's okay to share that there's an offer that's tens of thousands higher, but we love your buyer's terms. Would your buyer come up to, they're not even asking for every penny that the other person offered. Would your buyer come up to 172, whatever that number is? So it depends on the circumstances, but an offer isn't always, it usually isn't the best a buyer will do. And so as the buyer's agent, we need to know that. And as the listing agent, we need to understand how we might be able to parlay one to get to a better place for ourselves.
And keep in mind,
Last week, somebody said an offer isn't the finish line, an offer is the beginning line.
yeah, and honestly, the price of a house, that's how you market. We don't know what the house is worth until a buyer and seller agree on terms. Because the value of a house is what a buyer in the market is willing to pay for it. What you put that list price at, that list price is just a marketing tool, right? I lost my thought on where I was going to go with that. So the other part of what you have to pay attention to on this is what type of market are we in? Are we in a buyer's market? Are we in a neutral market, or are we in a seller's market? If we're in a buyer's market, offering 155 on a 175 house, that may come together. If we're in a neutral market, that may come together. If we're in a seller's market and there's different, I mean, for those that were in the market 6 months to a year ago, that was an extreme seller's market. And yet, to Diane's point, price is only part of, and it's a big part of. Any other thoughts around that scenario?
I have a question. As a chat moderator, am I supposed to just be doing the chat room or am I supposed to be talking? I
You
think
can
I
talk.
missed- Okay.
I like to interact with people. Are you okay with that? Are you okay interacting?
Yeah. Does everyone already know the sort of definition of buyer's market and seller's market by conventional wisdom or?
I do not.
So typically it's considered the supply, like if everything that's on the market, if nothing else came on the market, how long would the supply last? So if there's more than a 6-month supply, it's considered a buyer's market. And if it's less than 6 months supply, it's considered a seller's market. But what I want to say is that the market for the last several months, while it's a seller's market, according to inventory, it's a buyer-friendly market,
Mhm.
according to anecdotal evidence. So many new buyers are in the market. Many buyers are back in the market because they understand now they don't have to give up all their constitutional rights to buy a house, right? So offers are much more, the negotiation process is much more civilized and buyers are feeling a lot less pressure. So they're encouraged. So it's a seller's market still because we're low in inventory, but it's a buyer-friendly market, which should be very encouraging for your buyer clients.
I
And for
love
your
that.
Hey, Diane, can you tell that quote you said earlier in the morning mindset about New Hampshire? Something like 18 out of 22 or something like that?
Yep. So, and I don't know where everyone's from, but in general, New England, so realtor.com comes out with the 20 hottest markets every month. And so where are we? So for December, 4 out of the 20%, I can do that. We're in New England. And so Manchester, New Hampshire is not, and that means kind of the surrounding area too. Manchester, New Hampshire was number 1 for the 16th time in 22 months. Worcester, Springfield, Massachusetts, and Providence were all in the top 20. So I think it's encouraging. It's based a lot on affordability. So it's encouraging for our buyers. But if you have sellers who are on the fence, it should be really encouraging to them to get themselves on the market and not wait for the spring when others will be. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
There's-
And Diane, would you say if you're a buyer or seller right now, would you wait till spring market or would you take action now?
I would take action now. We have no idea what the spring market will be, but there are many, many, many sellers who are waiting for that. Right. But for a buyer, if you find something you like now, it doesn't mean they're going to be cheap. It just means that there may be more to choose from, but it's a great opportunity for buyers. They wrap their head around financing alternatives. And again, they have their inspections. It's much more friendly terms that used to be, what are you kidding? Are now in offers and sellers are willing to talk. So it's
Right.
buyer friendly.
Yeah, like we can now have inspections.
Plus, wouldn't it be safe to say there's a bunch of competition waiting for spring, so you're better
100%.
off doing it now?
100%.
As far as the seller?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the difference right now, Brian, is that this time of year, or actually in December, this is actually in a buyer's head, this is the spring market. After January 3rd, I took the Christmas tree down and they've been nesting and their tax returns are looming. It's a spring market in their head, but sellers aren't on the market yet, right? So it's a great time to be a seller and to be a little bit ahead of everybody else. You see more terminated and expired listings at the end of December because people take their properties off the market for the holidays, the winter, the mud. It's the best time to put your property on the market.
100%. And there's all kinds of objection handlers to that, which we will go over the course of time in business. 100%. All right, so now we're going to present
I
the
have
offer.
a question. A counter for so a lot of people, I have 2 clients that I've given those circumstances that they should get in now, start looking at houses because it's going to be a lot more competition during the spring, but they're just not finding anything they love. So they're like, well, I'm not in any rush. If sellers are going to put more house on the market in the spring, then we'll take our chances.
Yep. So let me ask you this, because that's been over the course of time in history, that has been the statement that has been made. What can you as the agent do to try to find that property today?
Work my butt off and keep an eye on like the second that stuff comes on the market. Tell me.
Door knock.
Door knock. Have people sell their house.
Say I got a
think she
buyer
meant-
in the area.
Okay. I have
Oh.
cards sitting on my desk right now that I need to send out to my neighbors.
So there's a few things you could do, right? Like You could do a search for homes that sold 7 to 10 years ago
Yeah.
that meet your buyer's criteria. And you can, if they haven't resold, you could pick up the phone and say, or door knock, whatever you want to do. And you could say, because we have to follow TCPA and not violate the do not call. So if they're on the do not call list, door knock, write a letter, don't call them because you don't want to get sued. With that being said, you can say, hey, they say the average seller sells every 7 to 10 years. I was going through the multiple listing service, saw that you purchased this house 7 years ago. I have a buyer looking for this exact type of home. If I were to bring you a offer that fit your needs, would you be willing to sell? Right? How do you find off-market properties? This is the time to be looking for those off-market properties because they're either going to be sold to your buyer clients or you're going to get inventory for spring market.
Okay, thank you guys.
I would also call expireds and terminateds or knock on there's no do not knock list yet, just so you
Right.
know. And my husband and I live in a condominium, the door of which was knocked on 3 years ago by my colleague on my team. And I was sitting in the car. So it can happen. But if you call or communicate with terminated or expired and say, I know you're getting a million calls from agents who want to list your home. I'm not calling for that reason. I have a buyer who's seen the information. We've driven by, we looked at the pictures, and they're very, very interested in just coming to see it to validate what they think they already know.
Yeah. And it's a great tool, right? So we're always struggling with, I don't have anything to say. Well, if you have 200 people in your database, what would it look like if you picked up your phone and said, hey, I need your help. I have 2 buyers. They're looking for X, Y, and Z. Is there anybody in your life that has that type of house that I could call and ask and see if they're like, you just have to have the nerve to do it. Like it's the fearful and fearless. Are you going to be fearful and not get it done today? Or are you going to be fearless and get it done today? And I mean, and it's just being in or out of our heads. Does that help? But I would absolutely, on social media, I would put together a pretty little picture that says, I have a buyer looking for, who do you know? I would call everybody in my database. I have a buyer looking for. I would go vendor to vendor, business to business. I have a buyer looking for. Do you have any employees, friends, family? Like, because here's the deal. We're looking for an excuse to talk to people. There's an excuse to talk to people.
Thank you. That's so helpful.
Okay, good. That's what the point is. Anybody else have any questions or anything that we can answer that you're just like in your head about? Because that's what this class is about. We're talking about negotiations, and we're also, if you're not picking up the phone and making the phone call or door knocking or talking to your people, you're never going to get to this point. So don't let that stand in your way. All right.
What if they say the interest rate's too high right now? I'm gonna roll the dice and hope that it comes down this spring or summer.
So if I were to have that conversation, I would have a conversation around, so tell me, what was important about making the move now? Taking interest rates out of the equation. What was important about moving today?
That's a great answer.
Here's the reason why. 90% of the time it's something emotional. Like I always use the example of I have 4 kids in a 3-bedroom house and they're killing each other, right? I don't want to plow snow another day. So I want to move to Florida, right? We don't want anyone ever to be mortgage poor. And yet the chances of us ever having 2%, 3% interest rates again are probably not going to be in our lifetime. Right. So it is what it is. My first house, I bought at 9% interest rate. My grandmother bought one at 17% interest rate. Right. Like, look at her, look at me. Like Jacqueline, 9%. Yeah. And you know what?
My mom said the same thing, but I got mine like my house last year, like when it was crazy low, and I just couldn't imagine. I mean, it is what it is, but
My
We're
mom's
looking at
was
affordability. We're lucky.
18%.
right. Well, and we're looking at affordability. Interest rates are a portion of, but it's not the whole story. You just don't want a mortgage poor. Nobody wants to be mortgage poor.
So I have this scenario. I don't know if you can help me. I have a seller who does not have a listing on the MLS yet, but I have a buyer who's interested in that property. But buyer is also willing to pay me the compensation if the seller is willing to negotiate the price. So how do you encounter that?
So essentially, the conversation I would have is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I have a ready, willing, and able buyer that would like to look at your house and make an offer. Are you willing? Is it, do you want to bring it, do they want to bring another agent in, or do they just want to have you represent the buyer? Right? So I would just ask questions.
I already spoke with the seller and he says he's not looking to work with any agent, but a buyer can pay the compensation and get the house. So
So go write the offer.
with the buyer, okay, but okay.
Yeah, your buyer client already said yes, so go have at it. Go make the deal happen.
All right, yeah.
And that kind of goes right into the practice of presenting the offers, right? That question that was just asked, like, so we have to call the other agent. We have to pay attention to nonverbal cues like pauses and voice qualities. We have to keep quiet once you present an offer. Listen carefully to what is important to the other party. Stay calm and relaxed. Focused on the customer's needs. Give your offer the best chance. So those things, right? So Diane, you have a listing, I have a client. Okay. Diane, I'm so excited. I have a buyer that really would like to write an offer on your property. What would make this offer a win-win for your seller?
Well, it's always going to be the right combination of price and terms. They
Okay.
don't necessarily, yeah, but I'll stop there. Mhm.
So if we were to write an offer with a 30-day close, would that fit your buyer's need, or do you think they would need more time?
You know, I hate to, it's always, money is the great equalizer, so it's going to depend on all the other terms. So why don't you write it? And let me see the whole thing as a package, and then we can come back to you with anything that might need a tweak.
Can you tell me, has anybody else presented an offer on your property?
How do you want me to answer this?
Well, see, you can answer it two ways. So which way, how can you answer it? Answer it both ways.
Yes, we've had a couple of offers actually.
Okay. Are they currently still being negotiated, or did the seller just not accept them?
Well, one of them has a home sale contingency, and other than that, it's pretty acceptable, but their house, looks like their house is going under contract, but you still have an opportunity here.
Okay. And then answer it the other way.
Which one? No?
Like, I can't tell you. My seller wouldn't allow me to disclose.
Oh,
I
yes.
was gonna say, I had an agent tell me that they wouldn't tell me.
Yes.
in
So
the
go
contract.
for it, Diane.
Okay.
Are there any other offers on the table?
I'm not at liberty per the seller's instruction to disclose that. Sorry.
Got you. So let me ask you this, if we were to present an offer, is there an opportunity to come back and do highest and best?
Can't guarantee that. It really depends on what else happens.
Okay, so that cue right there is telling me there's probably interest in the property, and I'm gonna tell my clients to write their highest and best offer, and I'm gonna continue on with the conversation of, so when I say highest and best offer, you told me you would offer $275,000. If you found out tomorrow that you lost the property for 280, could you sleep at night? Would you be okay with it? And if they tell me no, then I'm going to tell them, well, you should offer 280. And then I say, okay, so 280, what about 285? If you found out you lost it for 285, could you sleep? And I do that exercise until they say, no, I'm not willing to go any higher. Because we know for every $10,000, it's like $30 a month. Don't quote me, ask your mortgage company, right? But there's X amount of dollars every $10,000 costs. So it's not necessarily how much they're paying total. It's really, when is that monthly payment becoming unaffordable, or when do they no longer qualify for the loan? Gagne.
Yes, hi. So I just presented an offer yesterday. This house has been on the market for like 75 days. It's listed at like 350. Not in
Don't
a
give
great
me
state.
detail.
What's that?
Don't give a lot of details.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So we made an offer for like 40,000 less just because it's been on the market for a long time. Does that sound like reasonable?
Well, I mean, I can't really, did you do a market analysis?
Yeah,
There-
I-
And where, and don't go into details because we
Yeah.
can't disclose confidential information
Yeah.
on a recorded Zoom.
Okay.
And there might be agents that are in your market center that have interest in that property. However, you know, did you do a market analysis? I've seen properties that were on the market for like 75, 90, 110 days, and then all of a sudden they get multiple offers. Sometimes that right buyer doesn't show up.
okay,
It has to be win-win with on both sides. As long as you're not insulting the seller, you know what the market value is. Because you
Right.
know the market analysis, as long as you're within that window, you know, just know that if you insult the seller, it would be very hard to negotiate after the fact. So there's a lot of different things. Diane, add to that.
Okay, I'm just gonna, you're gonna regret the fact that you told me I could chat. First of all, when you're looking at it, you need to make sure it's always been at that price, because if it's been at that price for 2 days, it's like a brand new listing. So that's a different you might go in with a different number. The other
I
thing, you call the listing agent, you know, the clock keeps ticking. Once it's under contract, it could have been under contract, then the buyer didn't get their mortgage. The cumulative days reflect on and off, on and off. So you need to make sure you look at the pricing history, and also show you whether it's ever been under contract and back on, and you can ask the listing agent why. So if it's a new price, it's like a new listing. It's like the
Yeah.
days on. So that's really important to look at before you advise your buyer on what to offer.
Yeah, because if it was listed 110 days at the same price versus 110 days and day 102, they changed the price, totally different conversation. I agree with Diane 100%.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, both of you.
Absolutely. All right, so when we're calling the other agent, our goal is to get information. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it was a lot easier to ask questions than it is today, just because the market has changed so drastically. But don't be shy, ask questions. The worst thing they could do is not answer it. But if you don't ask the question, you'll never know the answer. The nonverbal cues, when Diane said to me, when I asked her and she said, when I asked her, will I have another opportunity for highest and best? I got verbal cues. I got energy around, I knew more information because of the way she answered that question. Keeping quiet once you present the offer, that's kind of along the lines of, you don't want to seem desperate, right? If you call every 5 minutes, and we've had agents do it, every hour on the hour, they call, any updates? We don't want to do that. Listen carefully to what's important to the other party. Like, I will ask, I know price and terms, I understand, I get that. And yet price is only one of many terms. So I'll go through the questions and I'll look at that purchase and sale, and I will ask questions around those other terms because I want to make it the best I can. Stay calm and relaxed, just like I felt Diane's energy around the answer to one of those questions. I don't want her to feel my energy. Like, I don't want to give the cue that my buyer will pay $20,000 over. And depending on how our energy is, they could get that cue. And then give your offer the best chance. To Danye's question, right? Like, are you giving your offer the best chance? Did you look at all the variables that Diane shared with us? And are they making that offer because they want to get a deal or because they truly want the property? Any other thoughts around presenting the offer and these key areas?
I would send an email cover letter explaining the offer, and sometimes there are terms in there that can be very favorable, but a listing agent might not know how to present them as favorable. So giving them a little bit, for instance, in our offers, we do inspections in 2 days, because if you don't, as a listing agent, you don't have to report the property as under contract. You have to change the status in New Hampshire for 2 days. And so we point out to the listing agent that, and we've already booked the inspection. We point out to the listing agent that way you can leave the property on the market. So if for some reason, by some slim chance, it doesn't stay together after the inspection, there's no stigma attached to your property. It was never, people never thought, oh, it's off the market, back on. And so I think that to point things out that they then can point out to their seller, because they don't always see the advantage.
100%, right. Well, yeah. We can't write love letters because they violate fair housing. However, we can write a love letter to the property. where we're not talking about fair housing and we're talking about the property. So love letter to the offer, love letter to the property, right? Stay away from fair housing rules. So when you're looking at you acknowledge and affirm common ground, right? That's why I ask great questions. Are they open to a 30-day close? Would they like a longer close? Would they want to rent back? Like, what are the common ground that we can find commonality with? What's important about that? How do you see us being able to put that together as a deal? You know, knowing the positioning is a process, right? So positioning of your offer, if you know that there's 7 offers, what's in that offer that's going to position it higher and know when to walk away? That's where I ask those questions, like at 175, at 180, at 185. At 185, they're willing to walk away. We need to know where the walkaway is, because the transaction happens once, the relationship lasts forever. All right. So now we have scenario number 2, which is under the position. So we're not doing partners because there's so many black screens and I don't want you to put you in a room with somebody that's not going to engage. So here's the scenario. The property has 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and is listed at $350,000 in a well-established neighborhood. The house requires new carpeting throughout the first floor and a new garage door opener. 3 offers have been made, but they were all below asking price. So as the buyer role, your buyers are making an offer at $340,000 for the house. They have been pre-approved. The buyers would like to close in the shortest time since they are moving from out of state and need a home for their family. Since they are leaving their appliances in their current home, the buyers would also like all the appliances to be included. On the listing side, your sellers have raised their family in the house you are selling and have many friends and family in the area. Since their children are now grown, they no longer need the amount of space their current home provides and have purchased a home in Florida. They would like to give all the appliances to their daughter, who has just gone through a divorce. They will not be moving until they have sold their current house, and although they would like to get to Florida as soon as possible, they are ready to stand their ground regarding price. So tell me about positioning. You have the buyer side and you have the seller side. What do you hear on the buyer side?
The opposite of the seller side.
Mhm.
They want all the appliances.
The buyer wants the appliances. What else does the buyer want?
Buyer wants to get in there quickly. The other people don't care.
Right,
And a discount for probably for the condition.
right. And what's the seller want?
Take the appliances. They want their price. First and foremost, they want their price, which is really more like $360 if they're taking, or $355 or $350 something if they're taking their appliances, right?
So how do you work this positioning?
Did you say it was the only offer?
There were other offers, none of them were accepted.
Okay, so they're gone.
They're gone.
So you know that, I mean, you know that the sellers aren't messing around. They're not just going to take any offer. So you want to make your offer the strongest offer. So
So what
unfortunately,
questions would you ask the buyer?
Are the appliances that break a deal?
Will the appliances break the deal? Absolutely. What else?
if they say they're going to keep their appliances, are you going to be okay with that?
Question, yep.
Scale 1 to
The
10,
one-
do you see yourself living here in 6 months?
Well, right. And so let's ask questions around buyers need to be in a place within 30 days because they're homeless. Sellers, they want to do their thing in Florida. So what questions could you ask the buyers to figure out if they can work through that obstacle?
I would ask them if they'd be willing to live in a hotel until the deal goes through.
Okay.
Temporarily, of course.
So I sometimes like to play this pretend game and say, because I try not to focus on how much over the asking, how much under the asking, because if these same people were asking 300, the buyers would probably pay $40,000 over the asking, right? So sometimes I'll say to them, humor me, but Tiffany, let's just pretend if they were asking 365, we still would have looked at it, right? We're looking at price.
Mhm.
If I got it for you for 350, would you be high-fiving me?
Yeah, but they're only asking 350.
Right, but at the end of the day, it's what you pay, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So if you feel like at 365, I was really like, you got a great value at 350, that's the same 350 as now.
Right?
Let's try not to focus on what they're asking, and let's try not to focus on whether you pay. You can pay more than asking and not be overpaying, and you can pay less than asking and be overpaying.
Right. And
But
here's
like-
the other part of the conversation too. This is a moment in time. Are you willing to have a moment in time of inconvenience for a lifetime in this house? Right? Because obviously there's something about this house that they like. And what would it look like? So yes, you have to buy appliances. Don't buy them until after you close on your mortgage. And yet, is that a deal breaker? Like, do you see yourself living in this house? And yes, it's a moment in time. And you go back, have you ever had a time in your life when you had to sacrifice to get to your goal? Tell me about that. Right? Well, this is very much like this. If this is the house for you, and again, history, how long have you guys looked at houses together? Is this your second house or your 27th house, right? When you're asked, so all of those pieces come into play. When you ask those questions, you're getting their emotion to answer. Does that make sense? It's not cut and dry as much. And for those that personally know me, they know I love cut and dry. Negotiation is not cut and dry. All right, what'd you guys hear? It was a good one. Come on, you had to have heard something.
I like the open-ended questions because I'm horrible at, doing that. So I need to implement that into my door knocking.
It's taken me 25 years to get good at it.
The questions are really painting a picture, it's assessing the situation to get the client to think. And when you mentioned, is this their second house or is this their 27th house? If this is their, 27th house, or, obviously that's a large exaggeration, but sometimes that's not. They're getting, search weary. You want to find a home, and that may play into. So asking the right questions is key.
Absolutely. Tidbit for you guys. Many times we set up showings based on geographics so that you go in a geographic. Set up showings the best house to the worst house, so they see the best house first, even if you need to zigzag. Because if you show them houses and the houses keep getting better and better, what does that do to their mindset? It's a total segue. However, that statement just made me think of that, right? So I always show the best house first, and then gradually, and I don't care if I have to put extra mileage on my car.
That's a fantastic tip.
Yeah, somebody taught me that, and I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that sooner? How many houses would I not have had to sort of show?
I have a
Right.
question. How often do you have houses that don't include their appliances?
It happens. It happens, especially if, like somebody brand new. Like
And
if
is
they-
that like a deal breaker for the most part? I mean, I know I wouldn't want to go buy appliances. I'd rather have it move in, but I mean,
You might, depending on the appliances they have.
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty rare. A refrigerator is probably the most common one, and sometimes that's with new construction.
Yeah.
Occasionally it's with not new construction. It's pretty rare. And it's money. Like, focus on the fact that, they can offer more than they're going to offer, get a credit toward closing costs, and go buy appliances with that and have exactly what they want. It could be
Yep.
better.
Yep. Keep in mind, in the seller's head, they are pricing the house based on how they're selling it. In the buyer's head, they're offering a price based on how they have to buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And that's it's hard to work through. Any other thoughts?
Take that same scenario, the homeowner already gave his daughter the appliances. They're not even in the house anymore.
Well, for starters, Brian, it won't pray, you have to have a stove in there for it to even go get past the bank. So that wouldn't be, that's really incumbent upon a listing agent to educate their sellers.
Really? I didn't know that. I didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
Stove and a sink. The
Yeah.
American dream.
Yeah.
You need
So-
to have a stove and a sink. Okay.
So someone private messaged me and asked a question, what's the reason to show better houses first? What did you hear when I said that? What's the reason to show the better houses first and the less?
Because then your buyer's always gonna think there's something better
Out
if you do
there.
it the other way.
Right,
Because if they keep seeing better houses, better houses, better houses, they're gonna keep waiting and waiting and waiting.
It's real
100%.
estate FOMO, right?
yep, 100%, yep. If that didn't answer your question, just send me another message. All
I would
right,
all,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, it also may shorten the search, because, they see that best house first and that's lingering in the back of their mind. They're like, well, I want to get back to that, so.
Yeah.
It may change the amount of houses you have to show.
It
100%.
makes you look better too, like you know what you're doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, you did just do a consultation with them, ask them what they want in a house, and now because here's what happens. You're supposed to be out looking at properties, knowing the inventory, right? They're looking at Realtor.com, Zillow, online, your KW app, all these sites. They're not getting all those details, and they just want to see every house because they're excited and in the moment. You always have to ground them to, this is what you told me you wanted. Based on what you told me you wanted, you sent me 5 houses. Those 5 houses didn't have a fireplace. So is fireplace a need or a want? Is it a desirable or you have to have it? Because if you have to have it, these houses don't have it, right? It's always being able to bring them back to the question. All right, so now we're going to go negotiation tips. So be professional. Don't throw a temper tantrum. Don't be emotional. Don't run over people, right? Don't be demanding. Be professional. Always remember, you're one transaction away from a bad reputation where if an agent had two offers, they were both identical, the only difference was the agent, how you made them feel will play a part when the seller says, which offer do you think I should take? They're both equal. Well, I've had experience with both agents. Let me tell you about my experiences. So you don't ever want that to be a reason why your client does not get the property. Keep your goal in mind. And when it says keep your goal in mind, your goal is to get your buyers into the house that they desire. That's your goal. Your goal, this isn't the goal of your business plan, right? So keep the goal in mind. Pay attention to your communication and tone with anyone involved in the transaction. I will be the first one to tell you, I am a very strong personality. I'm sure you guys have felt that over the course of time of training with me. And if I give too strong of a personality, sometimes people take offense to that. If I'm weaker and submissive, people will feel that they can walk over me, right? So pay attention to how you're communicating and your tone and how you're making other people feel. Continually refer to your client's motivation when speaking with them, right? Like, so that scenario we just talked about, they need to be in a house, preferably within 30 days. So any negotiating they're doing against themselves, we have to remind them that that's what they're doing. Don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest. And Diane did a great example of that, right? Like, we don't give the other side any information to use against us. So I would never say my sellers are getting divorced and they're being forced to sell and the sale needs to go through in the next 3 months, right? I would never say my buyers have to be here in 2 months because of a job, right? I would never share that data because that gives negotiating strategy and it takes motivation. And when you give the motivation to other people, they'll use that against you. And don't be attached to the outcome. Not all deals come together, right? You can't want it more than they do. Diane, anything you want to add to that?
Of course there is, gosh.
I've learned, I ask.
So with regard, when you're a listing agent, I will give some things away sometimes because it's great for them to know where your sellers are coming from. So for instance, with inspections, if you say, what are the sellers looking for? I'll say, well, I can tell you this. They're looking, this is New Hampshire and we do, but whatever. They're looking for a single deposit and they're looking for at least 2 to 3% of the purchase price. Of course, in Massachusetts, it's higher, and I know that. If your buyer's going to have an inspection, they want that wrapped up in 2 days. Because, oftentimes listing agents, buyer's agents write offers that are absolutely ridiculous, like a 21-day inspection. So they think you're beating them up if they even want you want to get them down to 10, when 10 is still too long, right? So if you tell them up front what the sellers are looking for, it doesn't look like something they gave where they acquiesced. Because we've had, buyer's agents say, oh my God, they've changed everything, but they changed it from a pretty terrible offer to a still not reasonable offer. Right. So sometimes I will tell them what the sellers are looking for as far as terms, so those don't become things that have to then be negotiated.
Yep, absolutely. And, to Diane's point, if somebody calls and says, hey, I'm writing an offer, and they don't start asking those questions, would it be okay if I shared with some of the desires of the seller so that we can start off with making some of it win-win and only negotiate the things that we truly have a difference of opinion on? Absolutely.
That was a really good point, Diane.
100%. All right, so that is the end of our teaching part of this. And this is, again, my favorite slide. So this is where you're going to interact with me and you're going to share, what did you learn? What's changed in your mindset? How will your behaviors change, and what tools will you use?
I wasn't even really sure if you could ask the seller's agent too much about other offers. I wasn't really sure what the rules were around that. So I'm glad I got clarification there.
You can ask, they don't have to tell. What else? And you're not doing, and honestly, you're not doing your buyer any justice if you're not asking.
Off of that point, I think communicating with the listing agent is very key. So I've only talked to one, but it's been so helpful, and they say if there's offers on the table and it makes your clients feel a little bit better. They're not all going to be like that, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't going to tell you anything because they don't want to, but
Hey, don't go up against Diane. She won't tell you anything.
But I think it's helpful to communicate with the listing agent as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Is it good practice to call the listing agent before you go to the showing, or is it better practice to call after, just in case if there's nothing, your buyer didn't like it? I don't want to waste an agent's time with 15 people might be calling them.
Yeah, see, I would show the property. We use showing time in Maine. So
we use Showtime here.
So I write a note, and is there anything I should know? Feel free to respond, and then if I'm going to write an offer, I absolutely call 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Danya.
Yes, so I was told by one of my team members that they when you go to do an offer, ask the listing agent what might be beneficial for my client. What does your client want to see?
100%. Yep. Never promising, because like how Diane and I answer the question is totally different. Diane kept all her card, other than what generic across the board, she did not share. Her comment was, well, price is the most important of the terms, is pretty much what I heard from Diane. Me, I'm gonna share as long as I have permission, right? I'm not gonna share why they're selling, but I'm going to share what's a great offer, especially if I'm not in multiple offers. Because I want to get that offer as close to win-win the first time around, so the negotiation is not offensive on either side.
I thought you were looking for that. That's why, in truth, what we do is we go back with the terms the seller's looking for.
Yeah. Yep.
I have a question regarding always show the best house first. What if you haven't been to the houses yet?
You can tell by pictures, by location, like when you're doing research, when you're pulling together. And when I say show the best houses first, it's also, if they told you that they wanted a 4-bedroom, 2-bath colonial and they sent you like 10 and only 2 of them met that 4-bedroom, 2-bath colonial, I would definitely show the 2 colonials first. And if in the notes in the MLS, it says it needs work and stuff like that, I would show the ones that don't say it needs work first. I would look at the pictures, which ones are dated, which ones aren't. Like when you're setting up that showings, I would look at the property disclosures. Some states have property disclosures, some don't. I don't know which ones do and don't. But if there's property disclosures, what do those property disclosures say? Like you're getting paid a commission to negotiate and get the best property. So doing this prep work is huge.
Brian, if you have the time, and you can possibly, if you can call the listing agent and say, I'd like to preview it if you're showing it anyway, or if it's unassisted, go preview it at the very least, go drive by it. First of all, then you'll know your route without listening to your GPS, and also you'll have a sense of, you can, it might be next to, exteriors don't tend to show like hazardous waste dumps. Somehow that just gets cut out of the picture in MLS. So you might want to just at least spend time on the outside and on the inside if you can.
Will do.
Diane, I have a question for you. Since you don't like to share things with your like buyers or anything, do
That's
you,
not true.
if there was like, if it's like a commercial / residential, right? And I looked up the zoning code and stuff, but if I didn't look up that and I just wanted to ask you per se, would you tell me? Or would it be something like you go out and find your own research?
Well, as a buyer's agent, you shouldn't rely on what I tell you.
Okay,
Like,
good to know.
and so I would probably go to the municipality and dig around as a buyer's agent.
Okay. And another question. So I went on like the town site and stuff and I looked at the zoning code, but it doesn't tell you what the zoning code means. So how do you, and like I Googled it, I don't know.
Tiffany might know this better, but you can also go visit town offices. It's nice to make friends there.
Okay. And like go there and ask.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cause one of my clients knows everything and I didn't want to be like, yeah, do you know what this means? So like I wanted to figure it out, but I tried to do as much research as I could and it kind of led me to a dead end. So
here, completely unrelated to negotiations, if it takes you more than 15 minutes to figure out, pick up the phone, call somebody.
okay. Yeah, I know that's my biggest weakness.
Oh yeah, we're all
will.
do it. Yeah, 100%. All right, any other ahas about this session? This is like literally negotiations that's why I'm in this business. It's my favorite part. Like legit, getting the business is fantastic, but being in the fight of making the deal and make it win-win, I love that part.
You seem very comfortable, both you and Diane. It's like you're both hard to stump.
Well, it's also, I mean, I'm 25 years, right? Eventually, and remember, we've always been where you are, and there has always been people like Diane and us, and Diane and I in our lives that have given information to us. So you have resources, just use them.
Tiffany, you said something earlier, and I want to like just reframe it a little bit. Or you and the agent across the table from you have a mutual goal, which is to help, which is to help your clients get to where they want to be. And that's either at a closing together or not doing business together, right? Whatever that ends up being. And so, but the closing together means that it doesn't need to be an acrimonious process. You need to work together. And that doesn't mean you're not representing your client, because you're representing your client and trying to help them reach the goal that they want to reach. And if you don't have someone on the other side of the table that understands that, it makes it more difficult. So we don't want to ever be that person who makes it more difficult.
Right.
You don't want to protect yourself. You don't want to protect your client out of a house.
Right. Your goal is just to make it win-win. 100%. All right. Any other thoughts about negotiations?
I want to throw out something. Last year, my girlfriend was trying to buy a condo. And the very first condo she saw was perfect for her. But prior to this purchase that she was looking to buy, her last house was over 20 years ago in Rochester, New York, in a whole nother world. So she told them, I will buy the house for asking price. I think she went 5,000 over on the condition that we have a home inspection. And her agent didn't say anything to her along the lines of, we're in a different kind of market. This is probably going to be a deal breaker. Didn't say anything. And sure enough, it was the deal breaker.
Mhm.
So her agent did her a major disservice because that house was exactly what she was looking for. And if she would have just forgot about that home inspection, she would have got it.
So Brian, is exactly what she was looking for, unless of course there was a wall full of rot. Then it wouldn't be exactly what she was looking for. So, you know, the thing is, I like to, we always say to buyers and to sellers, we'll get you the right house. We'll get you the house you're meant to have. And we never say find, because sometimes buyers will say, well, if I find it, I don't want it. So we always try to say get, because they're hiring us mostly to get it, not just to find it, to be successful in the negotiation. But, you know, that agent needs more education. That agent should have said, you know, they may not accept it with an inspection if you're comfortable, but what we usually advise our clients is to do it within 2 days, because then I will let the listing agent know that it doesn't give them, there's no sort of there's no stigma attached to the property if it hasn't been taken off the market.
Her
Right.
agent made it a 10-day deal.
Well, that's the problem. It's not the inspection. And maybe she wouldn't have gotten it, but she should have at least educated her. The reason her agent put 10 days in there is because that's what her agent's always done. And I'm just going to tell you, as new agents, one thing you should, if someone asks you if you're new, I would rather have a new agent who's getting the education that you guys are getting and understanding current strategies. I mean, if you go to a doctor who's been in practice 45 years and hasn't, you know, is still doing surgery the same way, you're screwed, you're dead. Right. So it's the same thing here. People, it is someone that you're better off as a consumer in the hands of a newer agent who's learning to do things in the market of the moment than a really experienced agent who's still putting 14-day inspections and inspection contingency in, because that's the way they've always done it.
Yeah, a shot of whiskey, a hammer, and a hacksaw. That's my doctor.
Yeah, so you'll get better at negotiations the more you do it, which comes down to you have to lead generate so you get the at-bats to make it happen, right? If you're not getting the at-bats, this class will be a distance memory in 2 months. Danya?
Yeah, sorry. So about the inspections, because I've been in business for 2005, but I left for a while. And now I'm back. Doing the education is wonderful. But the inspections, I was always taught 7 to 10 days. So I'm hearing 2 days. Can you clarify?
You sure can. That's a really long time for the seller to have the property off the market. And frankly, it's a long time for your buyer to be out of the market looking. They may miss opportunities. So that's what I would call a win-win. But the 2 days specifically in New Hampshire, and I can't remember in Massachusetts, is it 48 hours or 24 hours? You have to put something in MLS as under contract when it first goes under. But
Yeah,
every,
I think
right,
it's
every
20.
state is different. Whatever the time is, have your inspection within that time. So that if it's not going to stay together, the agent is not required to change its status MLS. Therefore, people aren't saying, oh, it's off the market. Was there an inspection issue? So it's perfectly possible. And before we write the offer, we call and make an appointment with an inspector. So have the appointment. So that what you were taught is a classic example of what used to be and what is not in the seller's best interest and not in the best interest. You, in whichever side of the table you're on, oftentimes something that you want, something that is in the best interest of the other party, also turns out to be in your best interest too.
Great to know that. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Is it good practice to talk to your inspector, like, hey, we're writing an offer, we're trying to do this in 2 days, so they know, like, hey, we
Yeah.
need to have this done, so you don't have to do a, what do you call it, is it contingency or extension?
That's what I'm saying. So book it before you make the offer, book it.
yeah, in the
Okay.
height of the market, I
Um,
had 6 or 7 different inspectors. I had my 2 favorites, but I always had the inspection scheduled before I even submitted the offer, because having the inspection scheduled just shows how much more serious your buyer is than other buyers, and there's less time that you have to wait. So whether we're in a buyer's market, seller's market, neutral market, I would have that as a best practice, period.
What
And-
happens?
Sorry, what happens if your offer doesn't get accepted and then you still have that inspector?
Well,
stick to go?
they just pencil it in. Like I've had the conversation with the inspector, hey, just so you know, we're submitting an offer, and good inspectors that understand the market, they're okay with it, right? Like, because here's the deal, over the last 2 years, inspectors were not getting the business that they used to get because people were not doing inspections. And as a designated broker designee in the state of Maine, I also know that there's a bunch of problems because buyers were not doing inspections. So to Diane's point, if you can do that inspection within the first 2 days, it's win-win, right? Because your buyer knows that they're buying a house that they've had inspected, and 6 months from now or a year from now or whenever it is, there's not going to be a lawsuit because the seller didn't disclose and the buyer didn't do the inspection, and now we have a nightmare, right? So you advise they decide. It's in everyone's best interest to have an inspection, and yet though the inspection has gone away in some areas and some markets and some conditions because the buyers wanted the property. If there's a way to get your buyer an inspection, you want to get your buyer an inspection.
Yeah, the biggest obstacle to this 2-day or 1-day thing is going to be the person on the other side. If you're the listing agent, you say it to a buyer's agent, they're going to say, well, I can't do that. 2 days, I can't do that. So I politely say, you know what, why don't we hang up and call your inspectors that you usually use? I can give you some of mine too, and just see if you can book it and then call me back. And the reverse is true too, that there are actually listing agents who will look at the, your 1 day or 2 day, and they'll say, my seller isn't comfortable. They want to put in 7 days because they don't think you can do it. Like,
Right? Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts around what we're talking about? This is all negotiating, prepping, preparing, and presenting and positioning, right?
I like the tools. I like the 3 Ps that you talked about. I definitely put those into my approaches, how I go from here on out.
Absolutely.
can I
Who
just say,
pays for the home inspection?
buyer?
Buyer.
When you guys are ready to write an offer, call Tiffany, call me, call someone, call if you're on a
Activity coach, call your mentor, call
Yep,
whoever is in your
everybody,
market center.
anybody.
Yeah.
Every single blank can be the differentiating factor that causes your offer not to be responded to or not to be accepted. So it
Don't
really,
do it alone.
Yeah,
Mhm.
don't do it alone.
Phone a friend.
How
Yeah.
much is a home inspection?
Depends on the house in the area.
Rough estimate?
In Connecticut, it's anywhere between 600 to 1,100, depending on septic and well.
Yeah. Back in the day, I used to be able to get inspections for $395. Now I get them for like $795 to $1,100. It's crazy. Yep. All right. So we're going to finish this off by talking about the success system. At this point, you guys, other than Mike, who this is his first session with us, other than Mike, everyone has seen and heard the daily success system, right? And at this point, we're almost 3 weeks into this. We should be having 10 conversations a day. We should be adding 10 contacts to our command or our database. We should be writing 10 handwritten notes. We should be doing the 10-5-1 social media. 10-5-1 social media, for those that don't know, it's 10 likes, 5 comments, 1 direct message. Talk to me about your successes. Who is doing this at the level it should be being done at this point?
I have a quick question about the 10-5-1.
Yep.
The one message, is that supposed to be about real estate or
Yep.
doesn't matter?
About real estate.
Okay, because I thought it was anything.
Nope. What do we do for a living? So,
Help people.
right? So tell me, how are we making out? 10 conversations, 10 contacts, 10 written notes, 10-5-1. I need to hear successes because this is going to make or break your business.
I think I'm over on that, except I thought that the one was about what's happening in their life. I didn't realize it was about real estate.
Okay, so now we'll switch that up. Who's taking action on this?
If no one's gonna ask, can someone go through what the 10, 5, and 1 is?
So in social media, you're liking 10 of your friends' posts. You're making comments, 5 comments, 5 words or more, and different for each one, not like, oh, that sounds great, right? Or congratulations, like it's 5 words and it's personalized to them. And then it's one direct message asking for a referral, or if they know someone thinking of buying, selling, or investing in real estate. I see a lot of faces that I've seen throughout these last 3 weeks though, so I know. Tell me something good about the success system, guys.
I've definitely picked up the phone. So I would say that I'm probably 90% on my success system. And
Good
by
job.
the end of this, hopefully I'll be at 100.
Right? Because if you're not talking to people every day, how are you building your pipeline?
Yeah.
If you're not taking action, right? Like the last 2 years in real estate, 2-3 years, it was speed-based business. It was all speed. Now it's actions and skill. If you don't have the skills and you're not taking the actions, you're not going to have the same success.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I was kind of hesitant on picking up the phone and calling one because it's just not in my nature. I'm a texter, but also because I didn't know everything. And I'm definitely feeling more confident on all the training that's been offered, that especially Ignite. And I feel more comfortable about picking up the phone because I know what I'm talking about now.
Right. And if you don't know the answer, you're going to go find somebody that does, right?
Yeah.
You always got to remember, they don't know what you don't know. That's a great question. Let me get the most up-to-date information. I'll give you a call back. What's the best time to call you back? Right? You don't have to, they don't have to know that you don't know.
I don't think Gary Keller knows everything. I don't think anybody knows everything.
I still coach people on deals that I'm like, wow, that's a new one. And I've seen thousands of transactions over my 25 years between what I've done personally and what I've coached to. Absolutely. Every day. I mean, to Diane's point and Danye's point, when Danye did the business in 2005, it was 7 to 10 days for inspections. Diane's talking about 2 days, right? And obviously every state's a little bit different. However, it's not the same. The business changes, and so does what your skills need to be. All right.
How do you know? Like, how did Diane know 2 days? How did it, if it switched from 7 to 2, how do you know?
It didn't switch. It's a strategy, right? So, but it's based on, I won't go into all of our spiels, but basically from representing a seller whose house was inspected and came back on the market a couple of times, when we got the third offer, we said, okay, the inspection needs to be within 2 days because, Brian, in New Hampshire, we have up to 2 days to change the status from available to active under contract. And so rather than another black eye, whatever, black mark, we decided to counter with a 2-day inspection so that we didn't have to report it as under contract in case it didn't stay together again. So that's the strategy. So now when we work with buyers, we say, let's do this, because then you're having your inspection and we'll explain to the listing agent why there won't be anything, any negative connotation if for some reason this transaction doesn't stay together. So
And
it
it's
just
a win-win piece. It makes it a win-win, right? These strategies and these changes in the business, it happens because it moves it towards the win-win in today's market.
I was wondering, does anybody have an example, just because this is my first class, how they actually added, new contacts, what they're doing to meet people and actually get their contacts?
Yes, so the 201.club, and then the numbers 201.club. Go to that website, the 201.club, follow the system. Race 2 has a memory jogger, which will help you add people to your database. But if you follow that system from Brooke is a gamer. She likes to gamify everything. So she calls it the growth prey, and it's race 1 through race 9. And essentially it will walk you from 0 contacts in command, or 0 healthy contacts in command to 201 contacts that are healthy, that will get you potentially $119,000 in gross commission if you communicate with them correctly. Mondays at 2:00, which is actually today, we do the KW New England growth call. You might want to hop on that.
I have my one-on-one with my coach today, but I definitely will get on that.
And the
what was-
recordings, the recording, thank you for doing that, because the recordings for this class and for those growth pre-classes are on YouTube. If you go to Keller Williams Realty New England on YouTube, you'll see playlists that have Ignite and then all of the other trainings we do.
Okay, awesome. That's
What's
Yeah.
the name of that YouTube site?
Keller Williams Realty New England. If you go to YouTube and you just search Keller Williams Realty New England, it will have all the recordings for this and all the other trainings that we do.
one
All right.
last thing. What did you say? The two, what was it? I was trying to write it
The
down.
201.club.
The 201. Okay, I'll look into that too.
And
Mike, I
Jacqueline-
just sent you a link to it.
Oh,
It's
thank
in
you.
the chat, yeah. All right, I need to hear 2 more success stories and then you are all free to go.
Can you repeat me that 3 Ps again? I'm sorry.
The 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are prepare, present, and position.
Thank you.
One more time on that YouTube site?
It's in the chat. The link is directly in chat. Just click on the link and it'll take you right there. So prepare, present.
Yeah, but every time I close out this thing, I lose it.
Well, favorite it.
Huh?
If you click on it, it'll open up in your browser and then you can favorite it on your browser.
You could save it to your bookmark.
Yeah. And it's Keller Williams Realty New England.
I'm sorry. How do I find that 201.club? Is that a
The
201.club?
201.club. It's also in the chat. It's the 201.club.
I'm not seeing it.
Kat put it on. It's the Brooke the Nerd, and you can go through it through that website.
Gotcha. Okay.
Definitely bookmark both of those. I've been watching the courses. It's nice to look back if you miss them.
Both are super, super helpful.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Well, I joined Keller Williams a couple of weeks ago, so like I made up a flyer that just to send out to like my whole street and then streets off of my street. And I got a call on Friday from a guy that's selling his mom's house. So that was cool.
And the only thing I would
That's
to
awesome.
one up that is door knock the neighborhood and say, hey, I mailed out a flyer. I just wanted to make sure you received it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
2-touch. And that makes it a 2-way conversation instead of just a marketing piece.
You
Yeah.
mailed them out or you hand delivered them?
Emailed
No,
them.
yeah, I mailed like I don't know, 200 something. But then I hand wrote the envelope, so like they'll open it, not throw it away right away.
100%. Yep.
And how did you get their actual addresses?
Well, you can look on Realist on the through the MLS on Realist.
You can do Realist, or you can go to the town hall and pull the public records reports for the streets.
Oh yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. I need 2 more success stories. I'm not going to let you go until I get them.
I called a bunch of people. And ironically enough, the people who I thought this is a waste of a phone call were the ones who actually, yeah, I tried buying a house 6 months ago and fell through or whatever. And the people who I thought, this somebody is gonna definitely want to do business. It's like, no, I'm all set. I'm no interest whatsoever, but I'll keep an eye out for you.
Yeah. You're just building relationships. All right. One more and then you're all free.
I joined Keller Williams January 1st and I just sold a $1.3 million home.
What?
Do
Congrats.
you have previous experience?
I have previous experience in construction management.
but not in real estate sales. Here's the deal. Thank you for that, Douglas, because at the end of the day, here's the deal. The reason we don't get our results is because we don't take action. The reason we don't take action is because we're fearful. If we can move you from fearful to fearless, you will take action a lot faster. You will make a ton of mistakes. Just plan on it. Diane, have you made a ton of mistakes in your career? Right? Ton of
Still
mistakes.
making them.
Yeah. I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Just take action. Just take action.
My PC coach just was incredibly helpful, just calling him and having him walk me through every aspect of the contractual stuff was.
And that's the point, Douglas. All you have to do is get the business, and you have plenty of people that will help you. If you don't get the business, there's nothing to help you with.
Doug, you look like a real estate agent. Your picture is awesome.
All right, everybody. Tomorrow you have another instructor. I will see you on Wednesday to wrap this up. Have an amazing
you.
Monday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Have a good
Thank you
one.
all.
Thank you.
For everything. I appreciate it.